2023 was, in fact, a year to remember. We're going to reflect on everything and talk about best moments, worst moments, and superlatives for the calendar year of 2023.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, December 29th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. And today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. So, Cats fans, this is our very last show of the year 2023. And I just want to spend a lot of this time just looking back at the year that was for the Florida Panthers and just reflect and just talk about biggest standout moments of the year. And who better to do it than with my Friday guest host on this Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. Nick Fairbanks is back here. And Nick, welcome back to the show, my friend. And happy soon to be 2024, my friend.
Happy New Year to you as well. We have a lot to go through in this show, so I hope everybody's strapped in and ready for an awesome 30 minutes.
Awesome, man. So a little bit of an update from practice today before we do get into the show. Sam Reinhart and Sergei Bobrovsky were not at practice today, but filling in on that top line was Steven Lorentz, and also they did have a special guest between the pipes, Roberto Luongo, as well. And Paul Maurice did say that there shouldn't be any lineup changes for when the Florida Panthers do hit the ice against the New York Rangers on Friday from Amerant Bank Arena at 7 p.m. But if we do have time, we will preview the matchup as well. But I do want to take time to look back at the year 2023, and it's also still the holiday season, so I'm feeling festive. I got the ugly sweater on, and I got a special drink that of course, me being a Hispanic myself, that we drink during the holiday season. And it is a bottle of coquito, and shaking it well, preparing for a great show. And cheers, my friend. I know you already had a bottle of wine today, but cheers, my friend. And cheers to all of you listening. So first, I want to discuss, and we'll do this in snake order as far as this. Let's discuss first and about the quote of the year for the Florida Panthers, and I will give you the floor first on this one. The quote of the year:
"Remember this room, boys. We'll be back here for 7."
Yep. Game 5 of the first round, between the Florida Panthers and the Boston Bruins. Matthew Tkachuk scores that game-winning goal after that Linus Ullmark turnover. Matthew Tkachuk scores to force a game 6 back in South Florida. But you know, I always have multiple quotes in case someone else decides to use the one that I'm thinking of. So that was mine, but I'm going to use another one. Is the constant "nobody thought we were going to be here." Matthew Tkachuk, same person, constantly saying nobody believed in us, and just constantly force feeding that, because Matthew Tkachuk lives for the narratives when it comes to and the spotlight and the storylines when it comes to it. And even us ourselves, we never thought that the Florida Panthers would would take down the Boston Bruins after a 42-point difference in the regular season. So after that, even people started to doubt the Florida Panthers and their ability to go into Toronto after defeating the Bruins. It's like nobody thought they would be there. So as both of them, we do have Matthew Tkachuk quotes as far as that. Best individual performance as far as this season for the Florida Panthers. I'm going to go first on this one. And it is game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final. The marathon that ended at 1:56 in the morning with Matthew Tkachuk's game winner. But it's not Matthew Tkachuk that I'm going to go with here. It's going to go to the goaltender, Sergei Bobrovsky. And just how dialed in he was. The only 2 goals that he gives up are on the power play as well. Let's not forget that. And going a perfect 55 of 55 at 5-on-5 in game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final. So as far as individual performance, game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final gets my vote there. How about you, my friend?
So you'll notice a theme with me, but I'm not going to go with Matthew Tkachuk on this one. I'm going to go with Carter Verhaeghe, game 7. I think that goal has probably catapulted all these other goals that were famous in Panthers history. I think that is now the number 1 goal for this franchise. Just what they were up against and what they're able to do afterwards and what he was able to kind of do. And, you know, he was able to put Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci off into the wind. So great players, but I think he just steps up in the moment that, it needs to be done for the Panthers.
Yeah, and just without that, we don't get everything else outside of it. And that's why when I did my countdown of best moments of the season, the 2022-23 season, we discussed, and that's why that one for me stood number 1 at that time. Best team performance when it comes to certain games, and this is this is the calendar year of 2023 from January 1 to at this point of the calendar year. What would you say is your best team performance of the calendar year of 2023?
I'm going to have to probably go with the game against Washington that they were down or they were tied and they needed to get a win in regulation in order to secure a playoff spot. And Tkachuk just throws it on net and it goes in. I just think the team – what's that?
For his 40th goal of the season, too.
Yep. And you could just tell the team was desperate. They wanted it, and you could see them coming together. And I think from there on, they believed in themselves and that they could do what they were about to do.
Yeah. For me, that for best team performance was game 6 of round 1, where it was a high scoring affair for both teams. I mean, you think about the different type of goal scorers in this one. I mean, multiple power plays, shorthanded goals as well for the opposition. Eetu Luostarinen coming in clutch. Zach Dalpe, and let's not forget that moment that Steve Goldstein shared, "I want to give you a hug." And then Goldie tweeted that he and Zach Dalpe, in fact, exchanged a hug the day after game 6 as well. So that for me is a great moment in 2023 as far as best team performance as well. But before we transition over to segment number 2 here, by the time this year is over, the Panthers, do you want to take a guess on how many teams the Panthers, the total games the Panthers will be playing once December 30th is over, Nick?
So in the whole year?
In the whole year, calendar year.
I'm probably going to say around...
That includes playoffs, too.
I'm honestly probably going to say about 90.
Exactly 102 games. It'll be 102. Okay. So it'll be 81 during the regular season and 21 postseason games, where the Panthers regular season in 2023, 46, 27, and 6. And the playoffs, 13 and 8. So at this point, with 2 games left, and some of the top scorers for the Panthers, Matthew Tkachuk with 90 points, 28 goals, 62 assists. Barkov with 86 and a plus 19. Sam Reinhart, 84 points, 40 goals in the calendar year of 2023. Carter Verhaeghe, 40 goals and 31 assists for a plus 7. Montour, the 11 goals, 38 assists, and then a big drop off after that. But even though Gus Forsling does not have the points, he does have the best plus minus at plus 23 for the calendar year of 2023. And also, Evan Rodriguez, yeah, he only came during the offseason. He played half the games, but his plus minus is just 6 off of Gustav Forsling for what it's worth in the calendar year of 2023 in his 34 games with the Florida Panthers. And Sergei Bobrovsky, the year 2023, 907 save percentage and a 2.71 GAA, and tied and has the 6th most regular season wins in the calendar year. And so far in this season, tied for 2nd in wins. So great that we're going to continue discussing the year of 2023 more next here on this special Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by AG1. And our next partner, AG1, is a daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. I drink it literally every day, and I gave AG1 a try because sometimes you need a little bit of a break from the coffee. You don't want to be too dependent on whether it's a colada, cortadito, café con leche, you name it when it comes to that. So you don't want to be dependent on that, especially if you live in the South Florida region. And sometimes I drink it in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon before going to work and before starting my day. And it makes me feel great. Sometimes it makes me feel unstoppable when I take my AG1. And all great athletes have one thing in common. They take care of their bodies. A huge part of it starts with optimizing their whole body health. It's a micro habit that delivers macro benefits and helps just about everybody and takes great care of their health every day. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL network. Check it out. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Back on this Friday, December 29th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. So Nick, continuing the theme of the year of 2023, what do you think that we learned most about the year?
You're never out of, making the playoffs. You're never out of the game. And if the team is able to come together and the coaching staff believes in you, ownership and management believes in you, then, you should be able to accomplish what you want, and you should be able to play like there's nothing to lose. I wish more teams would play like that with more desperation, but I just think that this is the team that South Florida's been waiting for a very long time. I mean, so much turnover, whether it's ownership, management, players, coaches. There's finally some stability, and you're seeing the fruits of that stability over the last couple of years. And it feels to me, it feels not real. I feel like, who is this team? Who is this organization now? And, I have to thank, Bill Zito for that. I have to thank, Vinny and Doug for sticking it out with the organization and also the fans in South Florida. But also, Aaron Ekblad and Alexander Barkov for signing their contracts and wanting to stay with the team and putting them in a position where they are now. So we finally have a team to cheer for, I think, and to be proud of. And I think they're going to take us a long way soon.
Yeah, and I think what we learn more is about just the process of learning how to just work together and all, because just at the very start of the calendar year, I remember January 1, you welcome in the New York Rangers to town, and you get manhandled at home, and then right after that, the Arizona Coyotes come to South Florida. Matthew Tkachuk gets a hat trick as well, and then up and down from there. The three back-to-backs in January as well, and it just takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of buy-in as well for the team, and that I think that's something that we learned as far as that it takes time for something new whenever you're changing a style of play. And that's something I think that I think the Florida Panthers definitely learned in the calendar year of 2023 as well. The most unexpected event to happen in the year 2023 is really how the Panthers fared with injuries to Montour and Ekblad. We know in the NHL they don't really disclose injuries, upper body, lower body, because think about it. If you're revealing that someone has a fractured foot and they're playing in the playoffs, do you know how much scrutiny the league would have, and the teams? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? So whenever we're criticizing players as well for their poor play, we also got to take into consideration what they might be going through as well, that is not undisclosed as well. And just the fact that literally moments after the final horn, after game 5, when you're hearing all the laundry list of injuries, and even Radko Gudas. I mean, I know Radko Gudas is no longer here, but even the hit to the head that he took in game, I believe it was game 2, if I remember correctly. But think about the dings that this team had, and just I we knew that they were banged and bruised, but didn't know how long it was going to take as far as month. But and it just goes to show that the whole, if it's a regular season game tomorrow, you're missing out. You're missing it. But if it's a playoff game tomorrow, I'm not going to go over all the injuries from this specific season, but now you start to ask yourself, if there was a postseason game tomorrow, would they be suiting up with the blank injury? How about you? What is the most unexpected event for you for this team in the calendar year of 2023?
Most unexpected. I honestly will say trade deadline. Panthers did nothing. I think that was the most surprising for me, just because, one, I think there was just so much anticipation of what Florida was going to do, whether they're going to be sellers, whether they're going to be buyers and try to make a push. And Zito did absolutely nothing. Sometimes the best move you make is the one that you don't make. And I think that just set the tone for everything else that would unfold. If I may bring up one other, I think it's the culmination of the defense to start the season and how great they were. They led the league in so many defensive metrics without the top 2 defensemen. And I guarantee you, every single person who's a Florida fan did not think that this was going to happen, or that they were going to be in this position. We just wanted to stay above water or at water level. And yet here we are. So I think outside of trade deadline, that is probably my biggest unexpected moment.
Yeah, and let's not forget that the Panthers at the time, they were viewing their biggest trade deadline piece as Anthony Duclair coming off LTIR at the time. So that was their trade deadline acquisition, and thinking, you're on the bubble. What's going to happen? What's not going to happen? Are you going to sell Gudas for a 4th and a 7, or is that worth trying to get an asset that it's just something on the dartboard, or are you going to go for it as well, or still have the belief in the team? And credit to Bill Zito, who continued that belief in the team. Before we transition over to segment number 3, I want to take the time to remember all the players who are no longer here, who gave the Panthers a lifetime of memories due to the year that they had. Even though Patrick Hornquist didn't play at all in 2023, his impact on and off the ice was really crucial for the Florida Panthers. The first guy in the tunnel, I remember when Matthew Tkachuk said bus in 10, he was the first one there, along with Alex Lyon there. Alex Lyon, too. Credit to him. Without him, the Florida Panthers aren't even in the postseason. And then all started from that late January run. I mean, he just back. I remember late January, a back-to-back in New York and in Pittsburgh. I mean, how tired he was, but he still didn't make any excuses as well. So big shout out to Alex Lyon as well. And even the Stahl brothers, let's give credit to them. We picked on Mark Stahl especially a lot during the regular season, but once the postseason begun, man, especially after round one, we weren't seeing him losing puck battles, irresponsible pinches and all that, and credit to both the Stahl brothers as well. I mean, Eric Stahl set the tone in game one of the Stanley Cup final with that shorthanded wraparound goal as well. So he was a big impact on the penalty kill, him and Eetu Luostarinen as well for a good majority of the year, especially in 2023 as well for that. So we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss more about biggest surprises, things we possibly got wrong, and what this team learned as well, and maybe discuss more about our New Year's resolutions. And we're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. It's almost the halfway point of the season, and regardless of where the Florida Panthers are in the standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick studs like Sam Reinhart, Alexander Barkov, Alex Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby, or Nathan McKinnon. If they'll record more or less their Sleeper projections like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. Use code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for detail and locational availability. Segment number 3 here on this Friday, December 29th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on the Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. So, I do want to discuss more of what occurred in 2023. We discussed the playoff run, but let's also not forget All-Star game that was here, which South Florida was on the spotlight was there during the All-Star break. I'm very thankful to have experienced it myself. Stanley Cup final and new arena name, Amerant Bank Arena, big deal as far as revenue for the Florida Panthers and getting some money going in, especially with the reinvestments they've done in their building as well. And a new practice facility in downtown Fort Lauderdale, which the Panthers did practice once again there today. And also, what I want to discuss, things we got wrong. This is a chance for us to discuss what we got wrong about this team. And I want to start with you, Nick. What did you get wrong this season that you might have said earlier this season, but the Panthers said but the Panthers play on the ice said you're wrong?
I would honestly say for this actual season that we're in right now, it was definitely has to go back to the defense, and that it was just going to be, we're going to have to score, a ton of goals, and, we're going to have to win 6-5 every game, just because we did not have our top 2 defensemen. But as far as last season goes, in the calendar year, I wanted Mark Stahl not even anywhere near this team. I just thought he was washed, and he didn't provide anything. And we saw what he was able to provide in the playoffs, and his brother as well. So definitely wrong about the Stahl brothers, and definitely wrong about how this team was going to start out the season. Happy to be wrong about that.
That's good. I liked it. For me, what I got wrong is Coach Maurice's system, thinking that everything that the Panthers did in order to be successful, even though the Panthers speed was basically eliminated in the postseason from last year, and thinking, man, we and this goes back to what we learned about patience and growth, and it all ties back together with that. But the ability to win these low scoring games, I mean, but Nick, let's also be honest. We as far as the round 2 on, it felt like that Florida Panthers team wasn't recognizable as well when it came to
Nope.
how they performed early May to mid June from even the beginning, and now seeing that carried over, just confidence. This team is so confident, and that's what that run brought. But I couldn't be more wrong thinking that the style of play could work. I was always willing to be patient, but had my doubts throughout the year as well.
Yeah.
And it was a doubt going into 2023 as well. So thankful to be wrong about that as well. We might disagree on this one.
Okay.
MVP of the calendar year 2023. And yes, this factors this season as well.
Okay.
But even though he is struggling to score this season, I'm still going to give my MVP of 2023 to Matthew Tkachuk. I'm still going to do it, because just the grit, the leadership, how he makes other guys better, finding the open teammates from the back of the net, still battling along the boards, the set play whenever they get it around the boards where you think he's going to take it, and then lifts his stick for it to go back to the opposite side of the point as well. You know, he's a guy who you still have to keep your eyes on, even though he's struggling. And like I said at the end of segment 1, he has the most points in the calendar year still, regardless of it. Honorable mention Sergei Bobrovsky for me as far as that. But team MVP, if you combine all the 100 games, soon to be 102 in the calendar year of 2023, Matthew Tkachuk is still my team MVP.
So I'm going to take your honorable mention and say it's Sergei Bobrovsky, just because he really picked up his game going into January and into February. He played his tail off. I remember going to the game up in Minnesota where Florida ended up winning in stunning fashion. They won 2-1 in a shootout, but there were some times where you just think he was out of the play, and he made some miraculous saves. Then you fast forward a couple months, and he's lost his starter status. We went with Alex Lyon. Then he lost. He wasn't going into the playoffs as the starter, and then he just took the job after that. And he basically was Florida's best player from there on out. If Florida actually would have won the Stanley Cup, he would have been the Conn Smythe winner. And coming into this season, I know you and I had. I'll just say I think you and I agreed on his expectations that he was still going to be that guy. He was going to have a save percentage over 900, and he was going to have, I think I predicted between 35 and 38 wins, and I think he's still on that mark right now. I didn't think he was going to be second in wins, but he's showing that he's still the guy, and that he's showing that he's now worth his contract. I know it took a little bit, but over the last calendar year of 2023, Sergei has finally arrived.
911 save percentage for this season, this specific season. 907 in the calendar year of 2023 as well. So just and Dale Talon actually went on the Cats and Bolts podcast discussing whether he would do the deal again. He says absolutely. And now seeing the performance and seeing how just so composed he is, especially after how it all started, and having to get off of social media as well to just be focused as well on the task at hand of just trying to be great. Credit to him, and I'm gonna guess that he doesn't miss the life online as well, for especially with how he's performing as well. If you had to if you had to define the year in one word, Nick, what would it be?
I'll just say miraculous. I mean, to go where they started in the beginning of the year, and I actually was going to bring up this stat. As of today, if you're going to go one calendar year back to December 28th, 2021, Florida was 34 points, and they were tied with Buffalo. They were about 9 points out of a playoff spot. It is miraculous what they were able to do from January on and into what they're doing this season. It's like you said before, we don't recognize this team. I don't recognize what this organization is now. And it's anything short of miraculous. And I can't be more thankful for that.
98 points in 79 regular season games in the calendar year of 2023. And if I told you that they had averaged a point per game going into the year, I would have called you a liar for sure. and all. So as far as my describing the year in one word for the Panthers, it's a growth year. That's where it was. And it's funny because I started discussing the year that was for the Florida Panther as a gap year, but I'm using a different word that starts with the letter G, and that is growth for the Panthers. This team grew. This team this team grew together. They also are very impactful in recruiting as well for other guys too. So I think that's really help as far as the unity. You have guys who are still going to be under contract even past this year, even though there's still a good amount of free agents too, but still a good amount of the pieces are still together as far as what they want to build as far as a culture as well for this team and moving forward. All right, last one for the night. New Year's resolutions as well for the Florida Panthers, and I'm going to go first as far as that. And a New Year's resolution for me is for the Panthers to find the solutions within when it comes to their scoring. And it's not necessarily calling up a Mackie Semskevich or Justin Sordiff and all, but it's just to look within and see and set yourself up to the point where you have a better idea of where you're at when the trade deadline does happen. So you don't need to, and I don't think Bill Zito is going to be desperate neither at the trade deadline. I don't think it's going to require that. But if you put yourself in a position where with the lack of capital and you have the scoring from within, you don't even need to be ultra aggressive like you were in 2021 neither. You can just do little small moves in order to set up this team. So set yourself up well for the trade deadline, and that means Matthew Tkachuk getting in on the scoring as well. Anton Lundell, Eetu Luostarinen, and hopefully the Kevin Stenley we saw the first few weeks, even though the expectation isn't there for Kevin Stenley to be at a high rate as far as scoring, maybe find that again as well. But thankfully, Sam Reinhart, Alexander Barkov, which Alexander Barkov has 18 points in his last 14 and three multi-point games too. You hope that the Panthers can get the solutions from within.
So my New Year's resolution for the Florida Panthers is finding a way, whatever they can do, to sign Sam Reinhart, Gus Forsling, yeah, and I'm going to say it, Brandon Montour.
All
three. Find a way to keep them together because, number one, as of right now, Gus Forsling's your best defender.
Mm-hmm.
Montour is starting to round out again, and I think he's going to start putting on a clinic. And then Sam Reinhart is literally the season MVP right now for the Florida Panthers. You need to keep that nucleus together unless there's something that just blows you out of the water to sign somebody or to trade for somebody. But I think this group is so tight and they like each other so much that you have to keep together. And I know it's a business, but if you want to keep this going and you want to keep this window going, you got to keep that team together at any cost.
Easier said than done. And hopefully there's some hometown discounts as far as that, because you're going to need at least two of those guys in order to take some, especially when Sam Reinhart, when he just keeps scoring at the rate that he does every single time you're thinking, man, unfortunately one step closer to someone else giving him the bag that the Florida Panthers might not be able to give him. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Wrapping up the year of 2023, the Panthers have a big back-to-back this weekend against the Montreal Canadiens and the New York Rangers. And by the way, before we wrap up on the show, Panthers, as far as last 10 games versus both teams, I had this up here. They're 3-5-1 against the New York Rangers in their last 10, lost the last 4. But against Montreal, they're 9-1-0 in their last 10. And before I even scrolled down to look at that one loss, do you remember which one it is?
Was the last game of the season in 2021, I think it was?
Yep. We won in 10, but the only 10 we got was in a game that did not matter as well, where everybody was resting that day. And Anton Lundell and Eetu Luostarinen were dressed, but didn't even take a single shift that day. So that's your only loss. And I believe that was Carey Price's last game too in the
I
NHL
believe so. Yeah.
too. So that's the only loss in the last 10. So big weekend for the Florida Panthers, and hopefully when we come back to you next week, which is likely going to be January 2nd, we are discussing 2 wins for the Florida Panthers over 2 original 6 teams. So Nick, thank you so much, and tell everybody where they can find you online.
Armando, it's been awesome again. Another year under our belts here. Everybody can follow me at Prudentia0 on X. And let's just say I'm feeling good about this weekend. I think we can pull out 2 W's. If not, the roles are going to be reversed. I think Montreal might sneak one, and then we'll finally take one from the Rangers. Either way, I think it'll happen. Either way, they're going to win.
Cheers, my friend, to a very healthy and happy New Year, and happy New Year to you, Cats fans, and see you guys in 2024, and see you next week, my friend.
See you next year.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.